Hey y'all, I'm Nick.
And I'm Steven.
We are Servis Events.
And we're going to take you on a little journey to explain how Servis Events got to where it is today. So all of this life choices and life decisions we're making today all started a very long time ago. Nick and I chose to go to MBIT for culinary arts in high school on the simple fact that we got an hour less school every day. We chose culinary arts along the same lines because it just sounded the most fun. It sounded like we can get out of going to gym class or get out of whatever elective class we would have had to do, and just cooking sounded like it'd be a cool decision to do. Come to find out how stressful, how high pace, how thankless the chef industry can be was way in our distant future. We had no idea when we first started this out. And so we went to MBIT, and when we got there, we had some very inspirational chef instructors. Mike McComb and Mark Gage were our two teachers back then. And they both had stories about traveling the country and kind of being like prankster type of guys and doing fun things in restaurants and fun things in the hotels they worked in. And
being 15 years old, we wanted to party and be pranksters, but work our asses off and kind of make a good living for ourselves and have a really kind of good family life and good work-life balance, family connection.
And so that kind of led us to look into jobs in restaurants. But before we even did any of that, it was our first time working together outside of skateboarding or outside of being, heavy metal musicians back then, where we were actually getting positive feedback on what we were doing. Nobody said a good job when you played music they hated hearing. Mm-hmm. And so it was cool to make dishes for the restaurant and the school that got praise from the guests, got praise from our teachers. It was kind of the first time we felt some pride in what we were doing, felt that kind of cool feeling inside of us. And just wanted to see how we can keep that going. And that, led us to get jobs into the restaurant industry, which we did for probably about 12 years or so.
12 years.
Maybe 11 or so years before the pandemic started. I worked at a little French bistro in Doylestown called Slate Blue. It's been there for about 15 years. That was kind of where I ended my professional chef career, if you will. And this private chef business started when Nick was executive chef at Ardena.
Yep. And when I was executive chef there, we actually just opened in November of 2020, right before the pandemic, or November of 2019, I guess it would be. And after we opened this restaurant, we were super busy. It was amazing, serving really awesome kind of Mediterranean food with a kind of wood fire oven pizza and pasta twist. And while I was there, about 2 months in, we had this lady who kind of caught me at the host stand one night while I was checking our reservations for the evening and asked me, "Hey Nick, do you do private events?" And I told her, "Yeah, of course we do private events. We have a whole private dining room. Yeah, let's sit down. Let's kind of get some numbers going. Let's get a menu picked out and let's get it popping." And she kind of leaned in like secrecy and looked at me and said, No. Do you do private events? I want you to come to my house and cook for me. And at this time, I probably said something like, "Oh my God, thank you for asking me that. That's so amazing. I've never had anybody ask if I would ever do that, not knowing what it looked like or anything like that." I told her, yeah, I would love to do that, knowing damn well in my head there was not a chance in hell we were doing that. I was so busy at the restaurant. We were busy from the time we opened to the time we closed. It was my first executive chef job. I was 25 years old. I didn't really know how to manage it at the time, but I was super grateful for this woman to ask me to do that. So I came home and said to Steve, "Man, I had this lady today ask if I would come and cook for her at her house. How crazy is that? Like, that's insane." And at this time, Steve was kind of looking to get out of the restaurant he was in. He kind of did his 3-year mark there and was kind of looking for the next door. And he said, "Man, I'll fucking do it. Yo, get me all of her information. I'll do it. She won't even tell the difference between us. It'll be very easy. It'll be great." And I kind of gave him the, no.
Yeah.
It's not happening. I'm not looking into it. I'm not talking to this lady. I'm so overwhelmed. We're not doing this. And
not that it died there, but no further thought went too much into it. And that was probably about the third week of February of 2020.
Yep. So I was going to say, like, little did we know that there was a global pandemic on the horizon.
Yes. And so when the pandemic came, our last day in the restaurants was March 15th of 2020. I'll never forget that day of packing everything up, going in, helping chef close down the restaurant,
Yep.
freezing things, cryovacuuming things, preserving things. So when we came back in 2 weeks, we could at least open with this menu, and these are the things that we'd still have in the kitchen from when we kind of shut down 2 weeks before.
Yep.
That has been almost 4 years ago now, which is insane to think about.
Yeah.
But at the time, we were told 2 weeks to a month, and for us, especially for Nick, more so, it almost felt like, is this happening for us? We were never told you can't come to work. We were never told you can't come to the restaurant. We've never had a 2-week vacation before, let alone a month vacation or something like that.
Never.
So for the first few weeks, our whole thing was, can we drink 1,000 PBRs by the time we have to go back to work? And that was just the goal. Me, Nick, and our buddy Evan was kind of really honed in on that. We started playing a lot of catch and just doing some fun things that we didn't get to do a lot when we were working in restaurants all the time. And about a month into this, we all realized, I think, that this pandemic is not going anywhere. And this 2 weeks to flatten the curve is a load of horse shit. And so we started having kind of a conversation around the ideas of skills being perishable. If you don't use them, you lose them. And we like to always kind of touch on not just the physical cooking skills we developed over the course of time and the palate you kind of develop from tasting food and stuff like that, the creativity you get of making dishes, but also the mental toughness, the self-motivation, the grit, the determination you get when you work in these very high pace, high stress, thankless environments. We used to always joke that you knew you did a good job that night if you didn't get yelled at.
Yeah.
There was no good job. There was no thank you for being here. There was nothing like that. It was just known as a chef that this is a hard thing to do.
Which I think we fell in love with.
Yeah.
We kind of were the outliers, if you will, of all of that, where we loved the fast pace, the chaos, the dance, the controlled chaos, they call it in the restaurants. My chin tattoo actually says embrace the chaos. And that was kind of what we lived by, and we love that. So thinking back on the 12 years that we just did, I would never change it for the world.
No, never.
I would never want to work in the restaurants nowadays. I liked being yelled at. I liked being told, dude, you fucking suck, do this better.
Yeah.
Like, it made us great chefs now. And I can't thank all of our mentors and our owners and the chefs that we've worked for over the last 12 years for kind of instilling that in us.
Yep. But when we started kind of having this conversation, it just so happened one night we sat down to watch a documentary on Hulu. The documentary was called The Biggest Little Farm. Having no idea what it was about or what we were kind of getting into or how dramatically it was going to change our lives. The Biggest Little Farm is about a couple who buys a farm in LA County. It was an old, decrepit, just completely demolished and nutrient-sucked avocado farm. And they did a whole 7-year kind of conservation, sustainability, regenerative plan. And this farm, Apricot Lane Farm is the farm name, is the leader in sustainable agriculture. This is a multi-million-dollar operating farm. It's probably one of the most beautiful landscapes you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And from us watching this documentary, I turned back to Nick and brought up an experience we had years prior and said, hey man, I'm going to look into the woofing program again. So when I was 21, I volunteered at a farm called Quarry Hill Farm out in Harleysville, Pennsylvania, with the sole purpose of trying to get a job at the Mainland Inn. The Mainland Inn was like the sister restaurant of the farm. Quarry Hill Farm presented the Mainland Inn. And it was the first organic restaurant I ever heard of, the first fully farm-to-table restaurant I ever heard of, at least in Bucks County or Montgomery County, I guess that was. And when I volunteered there, they kept telling me about woofers. He's a woofer. She's a woofer. We have woofers out in the field, and I'm sure like most of you listening, you're like, what the fuck is a woofer? And so WOOF is Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, WWOOF. And they kind of explained to me back then, or presented it, that it was a way to travel for free.
Yeah.
So you offered your work and you got free housing or free food from the farmer or the WOOF host that you stayed with. Back then, I was 21. I had no time to do that because I was trying to become a great chef. I had no money because, again, I was trying to become a great chef and we make big money. And I was not very confident in myself for those, to go do something like that.
Trying to become a great chef.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like this private chef business we got into. It was just so foreign sounding. I had no idea what it would look like, how to even navigate the experience. And just, I got a job in the restaurant that day. So volunteered at the farm, did a stage in the restaurant, my free kind of test shift in the restaurant, and left with an opportunity. I worked there for about 2 years until the restaurant shut down, unfortunately. And that was where a lot of our kind of farm-to-table mindset came from. Our food is medicine philosophy came from. Cooking just really nice, high-end plated food came from. And so when this shut down, 6 years later, we're at home, we can't work, we have time, we have money, we have confidence in ourselves. I finally said, hey man, I'm gonna pull the trigger. Are you willing to come do this with me? I did not work in a restaurant since March 15th. Slate Blue did not do takeout. He was still doing a day or so a week. So it was more of a leap for him to come.
Yep.
Also, he just, became executive chef. We spent the last 10 or 12 years working up to that point. Do you want to walk away from that within the first 3 months of even achieving it?
I kind of knew it was one of those experiences that would, change our lives. So knowing he's going to go live on a farm up in, upstate Maine or wherever it would have been, I knew I couldn't miss it.
Yeah.
And I knew at that time in my life, I kind of had to put the pause on the, chef life. Also at that time, only being able to put food in boxes for takeout because COVID. I said, yeah, man, if you figure all this out, I'll come with you.
So Nick mentioned that, if you go figure all these details, I'll come along with you.
Yep.
And so I started applying to any farm on the Wolfing website that said available immediately. I applied to farms in California, Idaho, Colorado, New Mexico, Maine, Vermont, Florida, all over the place.
Washington, Seattle. Yeah.
It just so happened we are not believers in coincidence. We're believers in kind of a spiritual universe where everything happens for a reason. It just so happened this farm in Maine answered us first. It was one of the closest farms we applied to. It's similar on our temperature zone, kind of climate zones. They're like 9, I think we're zone 7. But we can at least grow everything in Maine back here in Pennsylvania. It'd be great to go to California and learn how to grow lemon trees, but I can't grow lemon trees in Pennsylvania. So it was really interesting to kind of see how they answered us first. We were going to drive to wherever it was, no matter wherever it was. And so it was cool to be able to do a 7.5-hour drive instead of a 3.5-day drive to a farm in California or something like that. We were not getting on a plane and going somewhere in May in 2020.
No.
I was also not getting stuck at a place that I maybe would have hated. So we wanted to kind of have control over our own kind of comings and goings, if you will. So this farm answered us first. It was the Graham's family at Flying Pond Farm. We initially set out to go there for 4 months just because, again, we literally couldn't do anything else. It was a big leap to think about going to live with a family for a third of a year and get away from our family, but that was where our minds were at the time.
Yep.
And we were just going there to learn more about just sustainable living and organic farming, having no idea what would come out of it. And when we got to this farm, we kind of got very close with the family pretty quickly, and we kind of got to break down some of their walls. The husband at the time was in a hard health spot, and they knew they needed help. So he ended up opening up to us and telling us that he did not want us to come there after our interview because of our appearance. And we always like to laugh and joke how we know how we look. We were not born with tattoos and piercings. We did it to ourselves. Yep. We know the stigma behind a lot of it.
But we like to show people that just because you have tattoos and piercings and everything, that doesn't make us criminals.
Yes.
Or rude.
Yes.
Or disrespectful. Or arrogant. Yeah. Or any of the words you want to tie with what that is. We like to show people that we are kind and polite and respectful.
Caring.
And we might curse a little bit every now and then, but we're super caring and super passionate about what we do. And we like spreading that on the world who has this kind of weird view of what people with tattoos might be.
And so the farmers noticed that right away. And we became very close with them within the first week or so that we were there. We helped them make more money than anybody ever did. We did more farm chores than anybody else got to do. We had kind of, I don't want to say privilege in their house, but we definitely had privilege in their house.
Yeah.
And we kind of shared with the husband especially this business idea we had of these private dinners and how we kind of wanted to do this and
how we just wanted to keep cooking through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't cook in the restaurants really, but we wanted to keep cooking nice plated food for people who wanted it. And we knew somehow, some way the demand for it was out there.
And so we kind of mentioned this to him, and like I said, he was in, a hard health spot, so he was in bed the whole 2 months that we ended up staying. And every time we would go sit down next to his bed and talk to him, he would have a different idea. He would have a different concept. He helped us kind of do numbers. He helped us make a business plan. He kind of helped us make the whole thing into reality. And so we ended up cutting our trip 2 months short because we had this fire inside of us to come home and start this private chef business, which is funny that we chose the name up there of Servis Events. Our last name is Servis, as just kind of an umbrella for any kind of event we wanted to do. It could be catering, it could be small, intimate things, it could be whatever you could think of.
Classes, anything.
Just a way to start the business. Servis Events has 1000% taken on its own identity, and I would never change the name now. I wouldn't change anything about it. I wouldn't change the logo. I wouldn't change anything.
No.
So it's just cool to see again how this kind of coincidental thing turned into a real reality business for us, a connection with a family we never knew we would have had. We've gone back 4 or 5 times, since living there for the 2 months, just for a day or two trip to help out with projects. And so we have a lot of gratitude to the family there. And while we were living in Maine, we kind of really saw farm to table much differently than we have it here in Bucks County. We kind of saw that, here at least we have this kind of niche market. This separates us from other chefs who are private chefs. It's kind of a premium product that we offer, but allows us to kind of sell our event prices at a little higher of a premium price. But where we lived in Maine, there wasn't this farm-to-table market, so to speak, because it was just simply the way of life. It's the way that everybody lived. It's the way I'm sure all of our grandparents grew up. And so we knew Barbara the cheesemaker of Echo Ridge Cheese. We knew Tony the family butcher, Eric the dairy farmer at Sandy River Farm. All of our vegetables came from their farm. We made our own breads, pickles, jellies, pizza shells, tortillas. The first 3 years, if you've ever seen pictures of us, we sewed those aprons that we used to wear to all of our events. We learned to knit dish rags. We made pig fat soap. Just did some really, really cool homestead, farm-to-table type of things.
And it's kind of funny, and some people have told us it sounded like we were in prison.
Yeah.
But
the best prison ever.
The best prison ever, yeah. We had the best time of our lives up here.
And so we kind of saw that everything they had there in Maine in these regards, we do have here in Bucks County. We just have more convenience, and we have more distractions. We have an easier path, if you will. So we made a very conscious decision that anything we would serve on a Servis Events menu, we must know where it's coming from, how it's being grown, who's handling it. If we can't check those boxes, the only things we will buy come from a privately owned grocery store, some sort of privately owned business, somebody that when our money goes to them, it actually goes to them, not getting, maybe a penny.
Or 14 cents, I think it is.
Yeah, back to the farmer in California and we're buying oranges here in Wegmans or some shit like that. And so we just wanted to kind of really have an impact on our local economy and the people we were buying from to also help share their story. From doing this, we lived in Bucks County for 30 years now, our whole lives. And we're meeting people who have been farming here for 40 years that we've never heard of before. And so it's just really cool to be able to kind of help share their story, shine light on, these kind of small pocket farmers or in these little kind of niche communities in Bucks County. We have people who follow us, and anywhere we say we're buying from or going to, they just go there and buy whatever product that is or buy whatever that kind of thing is. We try to really teach about eating locally, eating seasonally, and how food really is medicine. And if you look for all these kind of things, we have found them all. And on our menus, when we do our dinners and our events, we explain where it's coming from, the health benefits, the flavor pairings, the techniques, why we do all of these certain kind of things, why we choose to live this kind of way. A lot of people will have the argument about it being too expensive or it being something they can't afford.
Eating healthy is too expensive or it's too out of reach or anything like that. Which we see, yes, it can be expensive, but it's not in the expense of the food cost. At least what we see is it's the expense in your sweat equity.
Yeah.
We go to these farms and we buy a lot of food and it's not expensive, but it's a half hour out of our way.
Yeah.
It's 25 minutes farther that way.
It might be only 2 hours on Tuesday and Thursday.
Yes, you might have to deal with certain other hours. So we make our lives a little more challenging to eat the way we eat. It's not more expensive by any means. And farmers love giving their stuff away. They love sharing and showing you and educating you on what they have. It's just a matter, will you take your time to go and get that stuff for you and your family, which we will.
It's always worth it. You know, there's that, we'll kind of close up with the idea of the organic tax. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this, but you know, there's that thought that you can either pay the high price right now for organic or locally sourced food, or you can pay the price for medical bills later. You're going to pay the price one way or another. I will always choose to pay the organic tax now. So it's up to you to how you want to choose to pay that tax.
Yes.
If you liked this video, please leave a comment. Tell us what you thought. If you really liked it, smash subscribe. We have way more informative videos coming, so please follow along with us. There's tons more.